Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We are zooming back into the Halal Metropolis, where we are connecting with the Muslim community in Southeast Michigan and just learning a little bit about how they are coping with or reacting to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as finding solutions to the pandemic. And today we're speaking with my friend of, I think, over 15 years, my friend Lama Ahmad, and she's a program manager at Facebook. Lama, let me know, how are you doing? How's your family? How's everything?
Hey, so nice to connect with you. I'm doing well, staying home, trying to stay safe and back with family. So things have been good, as good as they can be, and just trying to stay safe.
I'm glad to hear that. One thing to keep in mind about Lama is she's born and bred in the Halal Metropolis in Southeast Michigan, and then moved to Abu Dhabi for undergrad, and followed that up with a research fellowship in Jakarta, which I believe was interrupted by the pandemic, and she had this sort of unexpected homecoming back to Southeast Michigan. So, Lama, tell me a little bit about, what was that moment when you learned you had to come back to Michigan, and what was going through your mind? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting experience because actually, this fellowship is based in Asia, and as we all know, the source of all of this kind of started in Asia, and the narrative started in Asia. And so I kind of saw it like build up. And there was a day when I was with one of the other scholars who was with me, and we got an email that we all kind of had to go home. And it was sort of a rush because it was at the time when borders were also closing, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get flights back. Flights were banned from Europe. And we just within 24 hours packed up all of our things. All of the plans that we had for travel and finishing out the year were thrown out the window, and came home. And yeah, I mean, I came back to Dearborn. I hadn't lived, as you mentioned, in Dearborn for a long period of time, for the 5 years prior to last year. And it was kind of a bittersweet feeling. I sort of, I was really happy to be back with my family, very grateful to be with them and not by myself. But the other side of that is I was back in the place that I called home, but I wasn't able to really connect with it. I couldn't go to my favorite places to eat, reconnect with my friends like you in the normal ways that I would normally be able to. And so it was a really bittersweet feeling.
I imagine. I mean, yeah, I remember learning that you came, and I'm like, we can't even hang out. We can't go grab coffee or something. It's just, I can't even imagine what it felt like to have your fellowship be interrupted in that way. Tell me a little bit about your work at Facebook.
Yeah, so I'm on a team we're called the Open Research and Transparency team. But what that means is we're working with researchers who want to access Facebook data to be able to conduct research, and specifically research on things like elections, misinformation, and also well-being. So like, how does Facebook and Instagram impact people's well-being, or impact their political opinions, or their knowledge about things like vaccines. And so it's really interesting work because I kind of get to be at the front lines of thinking about how these ways that keep us connected can also harm us. And it's been a really interesting job so far.
Well, I want to talk more about, what you mentioned there about vaccines, and something you have some insight on is like the role of, social media or technology on spreading misinformation during the pandemic, which disproportionately affects the vulnerable communities. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. Like, fill us in on that.
Yeah, so I think like, misinformation harms everybody because it doesn't discriminate. But the reason that I would argue that it impacts vulnerable communities much more is that it relies on things like digital literacy, media literacy, science literacy, and being able to kind of critically read and analyze and differentiate, is this information that's presented to me accurate or not? A lot of times people will read a headline and, take that at face value instead of reading the content of an article. And so that can cause a lot of rumors, whether vaccines are safe, whether, like some information about a political candidate. All of these things require forms of literacy that, like in communities where English might be a second language or not as strong, that's definitely high risk of misinterpretation and actually consuming this information. The moms have WhatsApp groups where things are forwarded all the time. And I'm sure we've all had arguments with our parents. I know I have, about this article actually isn't that true. And so just being cautious of how this can impact our own communities is really important to me.
You knew exactly where my brain was going. Those WhatsApp group chats, they're a very interesting space. And um, yeah, it's incredible how quick misinformation can spread. Um, it brings up a lot of questions about, like, freedom of speech and what is protected, and what is censorship, and the shouting fire in a crowded theater principle. Anyways, I'm just blabbing now, but thanks for sharing that. And I think one thing to also keep in mind, you touched on this a little bit, is that there are real consequences. I think that's what we're learning during this pandemic is, yeah, when misinformation spreads about the vaccine, or about using hydro, whatever it was called, to inject it in yourself, and that'll somehow protect you from COVID-19, as suggested by our former president. um, People died because they tried doing that. I
Yeah.
think it was called hydro. I don't know if you remember, but hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, I think that was the chemical
Hydroxychloroquine,
name.
or something like that. It was something hard to pronounce, but people died. So there are consequences. So the work that you do is
Wow.
incredibly powerful. Um, what about mental health? Do you have any tips on maintaining good social media health during the pandemic? I think social media is powerful in that it keeps us all connected during physical isolation, but also, it could be a little taxing. At least I feel that way too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely personally struggled with this. I've moved around a lot. My friends are sort of all over the place, and the way to connect with people is through online platforms, and we're all from behind screens all day. I know I am, from working from home. And I guess, like, I'm not going to say anything revolutionary, but really just like setting, what's helpful for me, setting aside time in my calendar to actually get up, walk around, remind myself to get a drink of water, and not be behind the screen all day. There's also a really good feature of limiting, certain times of using the apps like Instagram that I can definitely get sucked into. And so those kinds of things are the ways that I've set boundaries for myself.
That's very helpful. I sometimes don't even realize how much time I spend. I mean, because I think on Instagram there's a feature where you can find out how many hours you're on the platform, and I
It's kind of
see it.
scary to look at.
I'm like, there's no way, but it's true. Um, Another thing we've been asking some of our guests is, if who do they consider to be a hero right now?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about how the pandemic has disproportionately affected women, and I know that's definitely true. I have a brother who is 8 years old, and he's in school, but also me and my siblings staying home, and my mom has had to really take on a caretaker role more so than ever before. And I think, like, who I would consider heroes are my mom, but also like all the mothers, because I think they're all definitely carrying a lot of weight on their shoulders right now. And so shout out to all the moms out there.
I'll echo that point. They carry a lot of responsibilities, and I know for me, I would not survive any of this without my very lovely mother. So I'll echo that point. Um, Lama, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule. We talked before this call, and a lot of Lama's colleagues are over on the West Coast. So she has a very busy schedule. Sometimes she has meetings during crazy hours. Um, so I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. So thank you so much, Lama. I'm incredibly grateful for all the work that you do. Um, Anybody who's watching this video, if you have a story you'd like to share, check out the link in the description and fill out that form. We'd love to share any story that you find meaningful. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lama, so much. And
Thank you.
we'll see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.